Good morning and welcome to Rising. We've got another great show for you today. I'm back with Michael Starr Hopkins. Thanks so much for joining us again.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, let's get to our top story. Another Boeing whistleblower steps forward, this just hours ahead of Boeing's chief executive's testimony before the Senate Homeland Security Committee. Now, according to committee chairman Senator Richard Blumenthal, whistleblower Sam Mohawk, what a name, a quality control inspector at a Boeing plant in Washington, alleges that the company continues to cut corners by using faulty parts and parts that aren't up to code in the assembly of aircrafts. Now, Mohawk is the third worker to blow the whistle on Boeing in recent months, the other two being John Barnett and Joshua Dean, who also exposed some shady compliance practices and then mysteriously ended up dead.
Boeing has denied any allegations levied against its compliance policies. In just a few hours, CEO David Calhoun will be testifying. Blumenthal and the other senators on the panel are expected to press Boeing's chief on whether the executive has made progress turning around the company. Rising obtained a copy of Calhoun's opening testimony. In it, he starts off by apologizing to the families of those killed in the 2019 Lion Air Flight 610 and 2018 Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302, saying nothing is more important than the safety of its passengers. Further in the testimony, he says, quote, "Aerospace safety is built on a robust industry-wide system that relies on self-disclosure, accountability, and continuous learning. This scrutiny, to be held to the highest standard, is fundamental to why commercial aviation is the safest mode of transportation." He makes the case Boeing values employees' input and acted on their ideas, saying, quote, "Much has been said about Boeing's culture. We've heard those concerns loud and clear. Our culture is far from perfect, but we're taking action and making progress. We understand the gravity and we are committed to moving forward with transparency and accountability while elevating employee engagement." Boeing has come under scrutiny in recent months over a plane door blowing off midair and other faulty aircraft parts, including landing gears failing to deploy.
Yeah, there are a lot of concerns, obviously, and then the suspicious circumstances of these two deaths. The one figure, John Barnett, was found shot in a car, and investigators believe it was suicide, even though he had previously said,
If I die,
if I die, it's not
commit suicide.
It looks like suicide, however, but make of that what you will. And then the other one, having Joshua Dean, even more strange circumstances, a sudden infection in an otherwise perfectly healthy individual. You don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but it calls to mind that, what's that movie, Michael Clayton? Did you ever see that
Michael
movie?
Clayton, or there's the Denzel Washington movie with Julia Roberts.
The Pelican Brief?
The Pelican Brief,
Yeah,
another
exactly.
one of those. Every time I get on a plane, I think about Boeing. I look at
Really?
Yeah, I do. Every time I get on a plane, I'm like, I hope this isn't a Boeing plane.
Yes, look, I understand that. Now, I always end up sounding like a note of caution. I don't want to sound like a company man for Boeing or something. It is the case still that, no, in America at least, no plane crashes in the last, I don't even know how many, like 10 plus years.
Yeah.
Right, knock on wood, but there are like 40,000 automobile deaths every year, and no one is panicking and calling the CEOs of car companies before Congress. We have a very low tolerance for this in planes, which maybe we should,
being it's 30,000 feet.
Sure, the psychic damage it's caused to our nation over 9/11 and all that. And maybe, we want to, God forbid, we want to prevent a crash. Maybe a crash is coming because the parts are faulty and we want to get ahead of that. So I understand all that, but it's not the case currently that planes are just like dropping out of the sky.
No, but I think this goes to a broader point about cutting corners. We've got these corporations which are making so much profit. You've got CEOs earning so much more than the average worker, and yet still they're cutting costs. Still they're getting parts overseas that aren't, the parts that are up to what they should be and the standards that we expect here. Yeah. That's really a problem.
Right, the inequality is a problem, and the airline getting the industry getting a huge bailout related to COVID. Of course, using that immediately just to pay out to the people at the top. Now, I was of course against the bailout anyway, and against every bailout that's ever been granted. I don't think throwing taxpayer dollars at an industry, it always ends up. Right, the CEO gets a raise and a golden parachute, and it doesn't
It never helps the people that are on the
down
ground
to
or
the
flying the
workers.
planes. I have a friend who's a pilot, and he always tries to convince me that flying is the safest way to go because it's all
is.
automated.
That is true.
Which I believe
is true, though.
I believe
It's statistically true.
until I sit down at that exit row and look at that door and go, oh, Jesus, what's this flight gonna look like? Am I gonna need a parachute?
I know, but there's no one. Now, I don't want to make, there's not literally no one. There was someone who got sucked out of a plane because, the exit door broke off. And there was recently a piece broke off, and luckily no one was seated there, but they would have been blown out. So I'm not saying it never happens, but again, compared to, I think the statistic is like 40,000 car deaths a year. That's a lot. That's
it is
one of the top, most common causes of death in the country, and we just kind of, accept it. You drive. I don't know if you drive in this town, but there's an accident. You drive past an accident every day. Not a fatal accident, but sometimes a fatal accident. It happens every day, and there's not a lot of commissions on doing anything about that.
But I think Blumenthal has a really interesting opportunity to talk to the CEO in this hearing about what Boeing's doing. What's their plan? What's their internal audit process? I mean, Boeing knew this was going on for a while, and it's pretty clear that they tried to cover it up. So what are we going to find out during that hearing? Blumenthal, I think, has to be really aggressive. This is an opportunity for Democrats to really press back on a CEO that's under a lot of trouble.
Yeah, and I wonder if he's going to face questions about these two people who died.
That's the really scary part.
Yeah.
It reminds me of kind of like one of those X-File, like conspiracy theory, what happened. It's, I don't know. If I'm their families, I'm wondering what's going on.
Yeah. So we don't really know what this Mohawk figure. That's again great name. He's a quality control inspector at Boeing. He says, he's making a lot of the same claims as the other two. Corners being cut, faulty parts, etc. Of course, you always have to take this with a grain of salt. It could be a vengeful former employee. It could be, fired for good reason. It could be something of that nature.
It could be. But when you think about how many Boeing planes are in the air, how much we rely on Boeing, not just for commercial aviation, but even for some of our defense work. I mean, Boeing has such a huge portfolio. And so for them to be cutting corners on civilian aircrafts, it leads you to wonder, where else are they cutting corners? Where else are they trying to make profits? And when you look at the fact that they're importing substandard parts from China, that becomes a national security risk as well. If you've got faulty Chinese parts in American planes, what's to say that you don't have, potential Chinese interference in the GPS systems and the guidance systems? I mean, to me, this opens up a whole new world of what outside influence Boeing could have. What organizations, what other countries, kind of where does this go? How far does this reach?
Well, conservatives have been saying the problem is in the DEI practices at these companies, and that that's why there are substandard safety.
When in doubt, blame black people.
Well, no, not blaming black people. But would you disagree that the?
Yeah, I don't think this has anything to do with the hiring practice per se.
I think they should hire the most qualified people to drive the plane, regardless of race.
Well, absolutely. But when you look at the pool of applicants, a lot of times you're not getting minority applicants in that pool who are just as qualified as everyone else, but are being left out because they don't necessarily know the right person. They don't know some of the people in the hiring. They're left out for other reasons. And I think, it's kind of like the Rooney Rule in the NFL. People complain about it, but we've had Mike Tomlin, who's now a Pittsburgh Steelers coach for, 10 plus years, because we got African Americans in the room. We're not saying hire people that are unqualified. We're just saying there are people of color who are qualified for these jobs, and let's get the opportunity to interview.
Opportunity to interview, totally fine. Outreach, absolutely fine.
Absolutely.
Just the most qualified people should be steering the plane.
Absolutely.
That's my view. Okay. More Rising right after this.